Hello there. Nick and myself are experiencing some scheduling problems. So the next literary as feck proper is going to be a little late. So I thought I should deliver a little solo interim show for you billions and squillions of screaming fans. So talk about a book here and the kind of history behind who I think has written this book. So cast your minds back to the 90s when creation books spin off from Creation Records, the Creation Books imprint. Actually, late 80s, I guess, is when it was began. And through the 90s, put out a series of well-regarded, very interesting film books, mainly, including the original edition of Killing for Culture by David Caricus and Dave Slater. And the book on beat cinema, which I'm blanking on the name and author right now, sorry about that, but it was a nice little collectible run of interesting books on different facets of cult cinema. And one of them, which I like a great deal, is Eros in Hell, Sex, Blood and Madness in Japanese Cinema. And this is by one Jack Hunter. And in fact, I even remember attending, it wasn't a launch party exactly, but when this book came out in, let's see, 1998, yeah, that would make sense. They had an event at the Horse Hospital venue in London over 2 or 3 nights, I think, where this Jack Hunter might have actually been there on the door, and they showed a bunch of relevant kind of strange, and in those days quite scarce to see outside of Japan kind of exploitation titles. It's an interesting few nights. So it turns out the guy behind this book, Eros in Hell, is, well, his name originally, when he was born, is this guy, Julian Hallett, I believe, born in 1959. And what I'm about to tell you can be found in more detail on a website called Creation Books Fraud, all one word, creationbooksfraud.com. So this guy, Julian Hallett, apparently came into some money as a young man, and so didn't necessarily have to go out and earn a living. So he, seems like he's led a fairly, not extravagant exactly, but, a leisured lifestyle, the man of leisure, kind of doing what he likes to do, turning his, hobbies and obsessions into his work. And I believe the story goes was that he started hanging out with the band Primal Scream. I think this might have been in Brighton, with a Primal Scream kind of groupie hanger-on. And via Primal Scream met Alan McGee, who ran Creation Records, of course, and talked him into starting this book imprint spin-off, first as a kind of vanity press for his own work and some other people he knew. And then that eventually morphed into this kind of acclaimed line of books about film. Now, from this period, from the late 80s through to pretty much the late 90s, there's no problems at all. This is a legit company, paying its authors their due royalties and all that. seems to have happened in the late 90s, or Julian Hallett, who, oh yeah, in the interim had changed his name legally to James Williamson, seemingly in a homage to the Stooges guitarist, James Williamson, right? And he had run creation books with a couple of other people. Those other people left, and apparently when he was left by himself, that's when the rot set in, and we're talking, printers printing stuff on credit, because of course, at this point it was an established, company. There's no reason to think any wrongdoing. Printers not getting paid, authors not getting the royalties, stuff getting ripped off, etc. Yeah, basically very naughty business practices indeed. And this seems to have occurred across, so that your creation books, and then you seem to have a whole bunch of other imprints and other pseudonyms, and so there's a lot of actual product out there with James Williamson Hallett, Jack Hunter behind. He's the guy behind this stuff, but it seems as if, so he relocated from London to New York and then to Bangkok, which is where he's believed to be now, and yeah, seems to be putting out product largely ripped off from other people who aren't getting paid for their work. That's the way I understand the story. Now, there's this book, so the main one I want to talk about, CARNAL, CURSES, Disfigured Dreams, Japanese Horror and Bizarre Cinema, 1898 to 1949. And this comes from the Shimbaku imprint, which I believe is one that's mentioned on that site, and is credited to, and here's a fake name, if ever I heard one, Kagami Jigoku Kobayashi, Mirror Hell Kobayashi, or if you really want to get literate, Small Forest. So we've established that this fellow in question is not to be trusted, and you'd think, that would be the end of it. Wash my hands, don't want anything to do with this fella. But this book is a fucking treasure trove. This is the moral dilemma, of recommending such a book. Now, I don't know if anyone else has been ripped off in the process of making this book. It seems to me that there's a lot of research gone into it. And even if at the very least, it's just that the author has had access to some, archives here in Japan and just translated things for the first time, and that's all they did. Still, that is an invaluable service, because you're talking 1898 to 1949. That means that 90% of the films mentioned in this book no longer exist, right? So that alone, just a list of those films would be invaluable for fans of Japanese fantasy cinema. But more than that, I mean, take this page, for example. This is 1930, right? Now, some of the entries are just, how am I going to show you this? It's got a title, translation of the title, any production info we might know. For instance, Byakuya Monogatari, Legend of the White Knight, 1930, production, Kawaiga, director Yamaguchi Teppei. A disfigured phantom with a snake abducts a series of women and imprisons them in his abandoned temple lair. I will probably never get to see this film, but I like knowing it exists. But then other entries are much longer, and when they kind of talk around the film. For instance, if it's based on a play or a short story, or is tapping into a ancient legend or something like that. So it sends you down all these fantastic rabbit holes. And so this book is going to be devoured, digested, milked for all it's worth. And I know this is going to send me to some very, very, very interesting places. And in terms of this book itself, I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything that it's all someone else's work that someone's ripped off, although that could be the case. And of course, that would be not on. However, I mean, it is a great book, kind of life-changing in a way if you're interested in this, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, because I mean, I'm struggling to even think of maybe a good book in Japanese that would have all this information in, although that wouldn't be my specialty, so I might be wrong there. So there we go. And the thing is, Eros in Hell as well proved that this guy, Jack Hunter in this case, James, whatever you want to call him, he does know his stuff when it comes to Japanese fantasy culture. And this is a very good book. And this, as I said, is just going to prove invaluable. But I don't know if anyone's been ripped off in the process of making it. And even if they have, I mean, I'm certainly not giving my copy back, or, you know. So it's an interesting little moral quandary dilemma. Highly recommended book in any other circumstance, but yes, bit of a morally grey, dubious area. I don't know anymore. I mean, if anyone has been, I don't know who that might be, or if actually anyone out there knows a bit more of the story related to this book in particular, I would really like to know, because if this book had come out, let's say, you know, Fab Press or someone like that put a book like this out, and it wasn't someone who'd been tarred and feathered and run out of town hiding behind a pseudonym. I mean, this would this would be, you know, one of the film genre books of note of recent years. So, CARNAL, Curses, Disfigured Dreams, Japanese Horror and Bizarre Cinema, 1898-1949. I would recommend it with all those caveats. However, if anyone wants to let me know what I'm missing, because I can be a bit of an idiot, and there might be, you know, there might be sources out there which this book is just told, and you know, this is just a worthless item, as well as you know, a catalyst for some sort of criminal activity. Right. So while we're here, because it was on the shelf next to it, there's another book. I thought, oh, I might as well recommend that as well, because this is also a book that I think is going to play a big part in my viewing over the next few years. So it's a Re-Enter the Dragon, Genre Theory, Bluesploitation, and the Sleazy Joys of Lowbrow Cinema by Stuart Home. It's from the Leather Tape organization, who put out another book. What was the other book they did that I liked? Stuck on the back. Oh yes, of course. They also put out the Search for Wang Wang, book by Andrew Leavold, which is also excellent. They've got some other interesting looking things here as well. But this might be able to print, but I believe Stuart has said that there's a somewhat rejigged, updated reprint on the way, maybe from a different publishing house. But this is basically a very sincere look at the whole Bruce Lee clone phenomenon. Your Bruce Les, your Bruce Lees, as I call him, although people call him Lai, Dragon Lee. You know, there's, I think it's something like 200 plus reviews of those films in this book. Oh no, hang on. I might have overstated the case. 140, still a shitload of Bruce Lee clone films, more than most sane people could actually handle, and he treats them seriously. You know, he actually, and he's not, how can I say, he's way over the, oh look, he's imitating Bruce Lee, isn't that funny, stage that a lot of people get stuck at. And yeah, that's funny the first time you see it as a teenager, but these films, I mean, I've seen quite a fair few of these films. They are full of really interesting elements beyond just that, and they deserve being looked at. That doesn't mean that they're great. In fact, a lot of them are among some of the worst films you'll ever see in your life. But there's stuff of interest. Some of them don't. Some of them are just, just horrible. And then, but other ones are just extremely, extremely bizarre. I mean, the cult favorite, The Clones of Bruce Lee, is kind of only the tip of the iceberg in that regard. So I'm really looking forward to delving through this book and watching along. I've read Stuart's introduction, which I liked a great deal. I like the, like I said, the sincerity of it, and I think I'm going to watch and read along in the categories that he's laid out. He's got core, semi, periphery, outer limits. So I guess, you know, the essential Bruceploitation items, followed by, you know, not so essential, and then the real odd ones. Like I said, I've seen a lot of this stuff, but I'm looking forward to re-watching some of it with Stuart's not very articulate today, are you, Mr. Davis? With Stuart's words in mind, and also discovering new stuff. Right, I'm going to leave it there now before I stumble over my words any more. I haven't had my coffee yet. So, Re-Enter the Dragon by Stuart Home. CARNAL, Curses, Disfigured Dreams by someone who is a bit of a douchebag apparently, but I do like this book. And Eros and Hell, which was legit as well back in the day, so that's one you can pick up without worrying about it. Yes, that's it. See ya.